Hey, thanks for making it to Veterans Daily with Jay and Clay. I'm glad you made it. Today, we're going to be talking about some very specific additional benefits that will either save you money or put additional money into your household every single month, and also help you plan for your future. What happens when you pass away? How is your family taken care of? And are there VA benefits that can help support that life transition? Let's face it. Look, we're all on a conveyor belt, and it's going to happen at some point in time, and you want to make sure that you're doing your due diligence, right? I understand there's lots of us out there thinking about what kind of life insurance I need to get and trying to do all these planning mechanisms, and I'll tell you, the older you get, the more expensive that life insurance is. So looking at what options the VA has to help offset some of these pieces of life is really important. So I'm really excited about this topic today. And before we jump into it, please hit the thumbs up, subscribe, share with a friend, all that good stuff. It really means a lot. And thank you to all you subscribers who've joined us on this journey so far. We really appreciate you. With that, I want to turn it over to you, Clay. I want to hear from you. What are the 4 topics that we're going to be talking about today?
Oh yeah, so starting with Champ VA, it's a very, very unused benefit that can really help a veteran's family in addition to receiving that VA healthcare for the veteran. We'll talk about Chapter 35, which is, in my opinion, my favorite benefit of the VA for your family. It's generationally life changing, in my opinion. We'll go into spouse pension, which is a more of a rare benefit. You don't really see it that often, but if that applies to you, you absolutely want to be informed and educated and take advantage of those benefits. And then finally, the DIC benefits, which is when the veteran does pass, what is your family entitled to, and how can you set them up for success after you're gone? And it's not, it's not really a peachy subject, but it's absolutely something that veterans have to keep in mind. I'm 31. I don't plan on dying soon, but that doesn't mean I won't. Let's hope not. But it's something that I want to plan for.
And I'm 50. Well, I'll be 50 this year, and so I'll be dying a little bit sooner. And so it's something that I'm starting to think about a little more, right?
Yeah.
Back at you.
Yeah. So starting with Champ VA, a very common misconception is the whole outline of VA healthcare in Champ VA. VA healthcare is for veterans. There are very, very rare instances that a family member can be seen by VA healthcare, and that is so rare that it's probably not going to apply to the majority of everyone watching. But Champ VA is health insurance for your family. The easiest way I like to describe Champ VA is it's comparable to TRICARE, right? You have your deductibles. It's very comparable. You have different levels of Champ VA, and that also Champ VA does not include dental or vision, but you can have those added on, like something called the VA Dental Insurance Program, which is basically a prorated private insurance dental program for those that have Champ VA. So tons of benefits can be used for veterans that do meet the requirements for Champ VA.
That's very true. And here's one of the interesting things. If you're married to a veteran, so it's 2 veterans married to each other, and you both meet the qualifiers, you can actually be on Champ VA as well as a veteran, which is also interesting. Some of the eligibility requirements, right? This is often a question that we'll get. Mm-hmm. So yes, absolutely. Champ VA is essentially a health insurance. I like to talk about it as, for a lot of people, it's a supplementary or supplementary, or however you want to say it, tomato, it'll come as a second to a primary insurance if you have another type of health insurance. So if you already have, through your employer or something like that, a health insurance for your family, that becomes a secondary, and it'll pick up, any kind of out-of-pocket costs, that type of stuff, potentially. Now, if you do not have any other insurance covering your family, your spouse, your dependents, that's where this really comes into play. Like you were indicating, this becomes a primary insurance. You must inform Champ VA, and their phone number is pretty easy, and you can call them and they answer fairly quickly. You need to inform them if you're switching from, hey, this is a secondary because I already have a primary insurance through my employer or what have you, to now I don't, and now I need you to be the primary. You need to inform Champ VA that they need to be the primary and you have no other insurance. That's an important piece. So as far as being able to qualify or be eligible for this program, I'm just going to read it off of the site. I know you love when I read, Clay, especially with how good I do it. But whatever, we'll stumble through it here together. So am I eligible for health care from Champ VA? So first of all, Champ VA, well, I was going to give you the name of it. It's Civilian Health and Medical Program of the Department of Veterans Affairs. As fun as that is to say. So that's why nobody ever calls it that, because it's a mouthful. So it's just Champ VA, but that's what it really means. So one of these must be true. You're the spouse or child of a veteran who's been rated permanently and totally disabled for service-connected disability by a VA regional office. So in other words, right, total and permanent, or permanent and total, those two things. Can you explain that, Clay, for our listeners, viewers, so they know exactly what the VA means when they're saying rated permanently and totally?
All right, so there's two different P&T ratings. There's IU P&T, sometimes it's called TDIU P&T, and then there's 100% scheduler P&T. Both get the same benefits, okay? P&T is P&T regardless of how you get there. Versus IU, not P&T, or 100% not P&T. There still are 100% benefits, but not at the P&T mark. So at that P&T mark, permanent and total, you are eligible for Champ VA. So what does that actually mean? Okay. Being permanent and total means that your static disabilities, static means they're not likely to improve over the span of the veteran's life. Your static disabilities reach 100%. So you could be 92% static and 100% schedular because you have acne at 30% pushing you to 100. But we know that creams cure acne, right? So that would be an example of being 100% but not P&T.
Got it. So to encapsulate that a little bit, anytime you hear permanent and total from the VA, permanent means that it's not likely to change, right? That static piece that Clay's talking about. And total means 100%. So those words are interchangeable. Total means 100%, and permanent means that it's not likely to ever get any better. And so the VA has just conceded to your conditions being what they are. The next qualifier here is if you are the surviving spouse or child, because Champ VA is for both or all, right? So whether it's your spouse or your children. So you're the surviving spouse or child of a veteran who died from a VA-rated service-connected disability. Now, this one's important because a lot of people will, just like VA benefits, we tend to self-segregate out of qualifying, and I hate that. What happens here is your death certificate has two spots on it. It has cause of death and it has contributing cause to death. Oftentimes, the contributing piece is empty, but it's there, and you can have amendments to your death certificate if needed. So an example would be if the veteran died from a heart attack, right? Heart attack, died of a heart attack. And it says on the death certificate, died of a heart attack. But they weren't service connected for any heart conditions. Well, they didn't die from a service connected condition. However, that veteran had hypertension. Mm-hmm. You could go back and have that death certificate amended and have them add hypertension as a contributing cause to death. That would then qualify for this purpose as cause of death. Okay, the VA views both as the same, contributing and cause as the same on the death certificate. So that's an important piece that we need to remember and utilize. I've had to help people with that in the past, and it worked out fine. So That's the next one. The next one here is you're the surviving spouse or child of a veteran who was at the time of their death rated permanently and totally disabled from a service-connected disability. Huh. All right. So again, we're hearing the permanent and total. So 100%. So what's the difference between these last two that we just talked about? The one prior is you could be rated at, all you have is a 10% rating for hypertension. And that's your only rating. And you die of a heart attack, you could have the hypertension listed on the death certificate to qualify you for CHAMP VA. The next one is you're 100% rated, permanent and total, permanent not changing, 100%, and you die, doesn't matter, right? If you died as a 100% rated veteran who's permanent and total, then your surviving spouse and children can also obtain this benefit. The last one, sorry, I'm going on, Clay. You're the surviving spouse or child of a service member who died in the line of duty, not due to misconduct. However, in most cases, this is going to qualify you for TRICARE. And so most of the time, you're not going to be on the CHAMP VA kind of aspect. Now, I want to kick it back to you, Clay, with a couple questions on this that I've heard anyway. How does an individual utilize, and I know you touched on it, so you just got to dive a little deeper, I think, for me on just to kind of walk somebody through it. You know, fine, I have CHAMP VA, but now what? You know, is there a CHAMP VA doctor somewhere? I mean, how do I figure this out? And also, what kind of things would this cover?
All right, so CHAMP VA is comparable to TRICARE or any other private insurance. Obviously, there are better ones, and there are some that aren't as good as CHAMP VA. And so, the best way to look at CHAMP VA is it's health insurance. There are in-network providers, and then in-network hospitals, and then you'll have something to note: if a doctor is out of network, but they contract with that facility, and that facility is in network, you can still receive care from that provider, given it's in the network. So I'll give you a quick example, right? My daughter has tons of appointments at Richmond, down in Richmond, Virginia, tons of appointments. Her doctor is out of network, but Richmond VCU is in network. So that is something that would be covered under CHAMP VA. And so everyone's situation is different, and something that I'd really want to push for CHAMP VA or private, whatever your situation is, there is no cookie cutter answer. You really have to sit down and say, hey, is CHAMP VA right for me? Now, one thing I do want to add as a planning factor, and I think this really trips up a lot of veterans at the P&T mark, is when you apply for CHAMP VA, we're talking the Department of Veterans Affairs, okay? It is about a 6 month, I've heard up to 9, but I think 6 or 7 would be average to apply for CHAMP VA and then be approved for CHAMP VA. And that's a large amount of time for anything that happened, especially if your family already has any sort of health conditions, whether that's genetic or a car accident happens. That is a large amount of time. So planning is a huge factor in CHAMP VA. And I like the supplemental mindset. That might be something that I might consider myself. You know, I personally don't use CHAMP VA. So in my situation, we have private insurance through my wife's company because her company's insurance is really, really good. And not to get too personal, my kids have a lot of stuff going on. And so we use private insurance. For me, I'm not comfortable with CHAMP VA. Now that's me. Your situation, to the viewers, you have to make that decision for yourself. There's really no cookie cutter type answer for that.
Yeah. And that's a good point. And for some people, it might be the only real option.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean? So I'll tell you that if you haven't priced out paying for insurance privately, it sucks. It's expensive. So this goes to the part about putting money back in your pocket. So let's say that you don't have an employer, or even if you do, in some cases, paying for your whole family to be covered can take a lot of money out of your check. Or if you're not working and you're paying for insurance just privately, it could cost thousands of dollars a year. So this is a way that you can deal with that. In addition, you can also have the opportunity to be able to utilize Champ VA for your prescriptions. Now, for me personally, we just switched it over to becoming the primary insurance for my spouse and my dependent. Okay, and so far it's worked out fine. We've utilized the pharmacy. We called the pharmacy, hey, do you take Champ VA? They're like, yes. And we're not near a military base anymore. Before, it was like I could hit a golf ball to the closest military base. So there it was like, okay, everybody knows what this stuff is. Everybody knows what TRICARE is. Everybody knows what Champ VA is because of the community. But now we're in a situation to where, we're not around that. And they still do understand because there's enough, I guess, veterans here that they get it. Some of the things that it covers, I want to jump into that. I do have a list pulled up, so I'm kind of cheating, but it does help to just run through them for those that are aware. Is there anything off the top of your mind, or you want me to just run through the list?
Not on what it covers, but there is an underlining cheat code, so to speak. This is the only, you'll talk about people, VA disability hack this and VA disability hack that. The only real hack is if you have private insurance. So for me, we have private insurance. I have VA healthcare. It's January, right? It's a new year. If I go to VA healthcare and get my prescriptions filled, that takes away from my deductible on private insurance because you have to inform the VA of your private insurance.
Right.
So the VA will take care of that. And so now that $3,000 deductible per year, every time I go to VA healthcare, it gets lower and lower. So that's just another way to save $3,000, right?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Good
Back
call.
to what Champ VA covers.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and this is a question that I get all the time because people think, for whatever reason, that it's a very minuscule amount of coverage, right? So the things that it will cover, and it says covered services include, and this is directly from the VA. This is from the horse's mouth. And oh, by the way, the application is very easy to fill out. Although I screwed it up twice. It's a small form. It's very easy, and it's filled out by the, or at least it's signed by the beneficiary of it, which is not the veteran. It's going to be the spouse. So moving on through the covered services, ambulance services, ambulatory surgery, durable medical equipment, family planning and maternity, hospice, inpatient services, mental health services, outpatient services, pharmacy, skilled nursing care, transplants. So it sounds like everything I would want. I mean, actually, I don't want any of that, but you get what I'm saying, right? Sounds like everything you want for the just in case factor. So what's the bottom line here? The bottom line is that you have a few different avenues in which you or your family can be covered with Champ VA. One is you as a live veteran who's 100% permanent and total, your family can be covered with Champ VA. If you happen to pass away and you were 100% permanent and total, or you passed away from a service-connected condition, your family, spouse dependent, can still be covered with Champ VA, thus saving money and stress, really, because money can become a stressful factor. So is there anything that we're missing on this at this point, Clay?
No, just to kind of recap Champ VA, I would say, what is your situation like? And you're really going to have to sit down and plan it out. I do like how you have Champ VA and I'm using private insurance. So the viewers get both, aspects
Right.
of, hey, is this for me? And no one can really answer that for you.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Well, it's like you said, it's if it satisfies the need, then you're good to go, right? You can always pay more later if you want. All right. So let's move on to the next one. The next one we have going on here in our myriad of benefits is Chapter 35.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in the same boat as you, and it has by far been one of my favorite added benefits from the VA. So I'd love for you to share with us, kind of your thought process, maybe an example, whatever you got on Chapter 35, another great benefit from the VA.
All right, so Chapter 35, which is also Dependent Education Assistance. And notice how it says assistance and not tuition. So Chapter 35 will not pay tuition, right? So if your semester costs $5,000 per semester or 20 grand per year, whatever that school says, that's tuition. Chapter 35 has nothing to do with that, okay? There are other benefits and avenues you can take for that. Chapter 35 is just a stipend. So 2023, it was 1,488. That was increased. I don't know the total now. It's probably going to be around 1,500 in 2024. But basically, I'll give you an example. I have 3 kids right now, 4 here in about 3 days. All 4 of my kids, when they go to school, will have the opportunity to apply for Chapter 35. They will get a stipend, basically a check that's non-taxable income. Says, hey, here's $1,500 because your family member, qualified for Chapter 35. Therefore, we can give you this money. That's all it is, right? So housing, groceries. Hopefully, they're not spending it on beer pong tables or whatever kids do in college. I hope that's not the case, but that's what Chapter 35 is. One of the most unused and just unspoken about benefits that can really set. It can change your family name and set you up for generational wealth. Just having that stipend for your kids in college, and it also applies to spouses too.
Yeah, absolutely. I love this benefit. And one of the examples that I give is, look, it's expensive out there, right? And sometimes if you have a good school near you, your kid's going to stay at home, right? They turned 18, they graduated high school, they're going to go to the college of whatever, basket weaving, right? And so they're there, but they're still living at home. This is a benefit in which it's currently 1488. In October, I think, is when they change it. It's weird. The VA is just this weird animal, right? So they actually apply their own version of COLA to several different benefits, and this is one of the internal COLAs. We all know the COLA of 3.2 that we received for our disability compensation. However, VA determined that they should increase this benefit, and I can't remember. I think it's 5.2. It might have been 5.6. It was 5 something.
I think it's 5.2.
Yeah, so 5.2% COLA. They're calling it a COLA, cost of living adjustment, for this specific stipend. Boy, I wish we would have got a 5.2 on our compensation. That would have been sweet. So in any case, so the VA adjusts that themselves. Now, this 1488, which is going to run for the next, 8 months or whatever it is, can be applied to as many dependents as you have. So like Clay said, if you have, 4 kids and a wife, all 5 can receive this benefit at the same time, if that was, applicable, if they were all close to the same, in the same age ranges and so forth, except for the spouse, obviously, would be much older. So, but you could increase your household income. Now, let's look at an inexpensive, higher level education, right? So a community college somewhere, low tuition, going full time, you would get that 1488. And you would get it if your spouse went and your dependent child went. Now you got 1488 times 2. So nearly $3,000 of tax-free additional money coming into the household. Okay. Now, granted, it's being paid to your dependent child and to your spouse, but money in is money in. And if they have their own money to spend on extra things, then that's coming out of that instead of from you. So it's just another way to increase the household income during the educational process. And the whole idea is so you don't have to go out and, maybe you only have to work part-time. Maybe you don't need to work at all because you're living at home and you can buy your own food and so forth. So one of the things with Chapter 35 that I like to point out is your state, whatever state you're in, may offer some sort of tuition assistance or some sort of an educational benefit that your spouse or your dependents could utilize in conjunction with Chapter 35. So like Clay said, this doesn't pay for your tuition. You got to pay for your tuition yourself. So for an example, if it's $300 a month for tuition to go to a low cost school, you're going to pay that $300 out of your $1,488, leaving you with the remainder to spend on whatever you need. So what if you could get your tuition covered in another way? And you kind of alluded to that up front. The example I like to give is California. California has probably, I would argue, the best as far as education's concerned for dependents. If you are the dependent of a disabled veteran at any percentage rating, you get tuition waived all the way through to a doctorate, as much school as you can complete, tuition waived at any state school. So that would be a state university, a CSU or UC in California, or a community college, whatever. And you could push through all the way if you can get it done by a certain age or dollar amount. I can't remember. The other version is if you're 100% rated, then your spouse can also utilize that same tuition fee waived program through their schools. One of them, and I can't remember, I'm kind of mixing the two, but the bottom line point is to research. One of them has an income restriction. You can only make so much money per year while you're going to school, like $15,000 a year. And the other one has an age requirement restriction that's like you have to complete it before the age of 27. So as much school as you can get done before you're 27. And one of them says there's no prohibition against Chapter 35. So you can go tuition free to a legitimate university and become a doctor and get $1,488 a month from Chapter 35. And so obviously I don't know every state off the top of my head. I know that one because it's a good one. You as the veteran do not need to live in that state. Just whoever's going to school has to. So the bottom line is check your state, see what kind of benefits are out there. I know Texas has the Hazelwood Act, which is also a very, very good educational benefit. So check your state, see what kind of benefits are out there. And I will also throw out this. If your state does not offer something, let your legislators know. These states need to vie to keep us there. Right? They have a vested interest in us as veterans being in the state, pulling in the various benefits. So with that, I'm going to kick it back to you, Clay. I rambled a lot. I tried to just shed a little extra light on there. But is there anything else that you could think about other than diving into, in a minute, the requirements, right? What qualifies somebody for this tremendous benefit? I guess that's what we got to get into.
Oh, yeah. So DEA is... I think the California example is perfect. Like whenever I mentioned setting your family up for generational wealth, that is a scenario in that state where your child could become a doctor or lawyer, or hey, just get a 4-year degree, whatever it is that wants to float their boat, start their own business on free tuition because of a state benefit, which is outside of Chapter 35. But then they have the stipend from Chapter 35 for housing, food. Maybe your child lives with you, right, in a perfect scenario. And now when they get out of college, they have whatever 1488 times however many semesters it takes to get a degree, right? And so that's a down payment on a home, right? Like Chapter 35 is life changing. But as far as being qualified for Chapter 35, it goes back. It's very similar to Chant VA, right? You reach that P&T mark, whether you're TDIU, IU P&T, or 100% scheduler P&T.
Got it. And so I'm going to run through them quickly here. And for those that are watching and are really interested in this, just rewind if you need to hear them all. And you can also go to the VA's website and call the educational line, or you can just Google search and go to the VA's website for Chapter 35. You can put in VA CHP 35, and it should take you right to it. But I'm going to run through them here real quick. So the veteran or service member is permanently and totally disabled due to a service-connected disability, which is exactly what Clay said, that 100% P&T. Or the veteran or service member died in the line of duty, so that's another qualifier. The veteran or service member died as a result of a service-connected disability. So that's the one we talked about with the death certificate, having either the cause of death or the contributing cause of death being a service-connected condition. And you can get death certificates amended and get that information put on there. Next one, the veteran or service member is missing in action or was captured in the line of duty by a hostile force for more than 90 days. The veteran or service member was forcibly detained or interned in the line of duty by a foreign entity for more than 90 days, which is kind of like POW. So the service member is in the hospital or getting outpatient treatment for a service-connected permanent and total disability and is likely to be just discharged for that disability. So currently in service, probably going through the med board process, and this would also spur this benefit on. So important to know that there are many different avenues to get there. So with that, is there anything we're missing on this other than, hey, this is a great benefit, utilize it, get $14.88 a month and get some education on top of it?
One of the most unspoken about unused benefits, in my opinion. Every veteran, there's no reason your family should not use this. There's not a single reason.
Agreed. I have both my spouse and my oldest son utilized this benefit. So my oldest until he joined the Air Force, and then he can't use it. So now, because he's DOD now. So awesome. Let's move on to VA survivors benefits, specifically pension. So VA survivors pension is a fantastic, underutilized, underknown benefit. How I describe it, my short version, I'll kick it to you to kind of give me your overview of it, and then we'll dive into it a little bit, is one, I hate the word pension, first of all. I hate it for veterans pension, and I hate it for survivors pension because it alludes to some sort of a retirement, like VA pension. Okay, well, you worked for the VA and now you're getting a pension. No, this is a safety net benefit for low and no income veterans and surviving spouses. So two. All right, Clay, give me your kind of overview as well on kind of, even if you kind of talk about the same thing I did, just another way of putting it so folks know what we're talking about.
Yeah, I really like the safety net aspect. Okay, it's much better. I'm also on board. I don't like the word pension. I also wouldn't like welfare either, but it's very comparable to welfare. It's that safety net. So let's just say I am from middle of nowhere, Kentucky. Okay, where I'm from, the income threshold is below the poverty line, and I'm talking like the real part of Kentucky. And so if I live there now and the only jobs available to me was coal mining or McDonald's or whatever that looks like, and then I passed away from a service-connected condition, or I'm P&T for 10 years, don't quote me on that, there's a time period there, my spouse would be eligible for that safety net. And it's a protection clause for spouses if the veteran does pass away, and it can kind of just, if you're in that situation, I think it would put you at ease knowing that that safety net is there, especially if you qualify for that low income household.
Right. So there's two specific benefits when it comes to surviving spouses, and one is the dependency indemnity compensation, and the other is the surviving spouse pension. Right. So the surviving spouse pension, as the safety net, like I like to call it, is truly an income-based, means-tested program. You, as a surviving spouse out there, may qualify, again, if you're low or no income. And now what they have is there's something called the maximum allowable pension rate. And that sets that kind of that poverty line that we're talking about, that this is the maximum amount. If you're not sure, yeah, my take on all of this stuff is, look, even if you're kind of close, you should go have a conversation with an accredited representative, especially when it comes to income-based programs, because the application process is a bit tedious. It's more difficult than a regular, I'm going to file a disability claim. Okay, there's a lot of nuts and bolts in there, and a lot of income and asset aspects to it. There's certain thresholds you can meet or that you need to fall below, and there's certain deductions, we'll call it, that you can take from your income based on ongoing medical kind of expenses and so forth to lower your overall income. Now, the one important piece to talk about when it comes to surviving spouse pension, or even veteran pension for that matter, is you must, if it's a veteran, you must be a war period veteran. Okay, war period's different than, like, combat veteran, right? You didn't actually need to go serve in a combat zone, a theater of operations, any of that type of stuff, but you had to be in during that time frame. Doesn't matter where you were, you just need to be in, because as we all know, you get zero kind of call on where you get sent. As long as you serve during a war period, you'll qualify. So for the surviving spouse, if the veteran spouse who passed away served during a war period, then that would open up this window as a qualifier for you. Then you're going to look at the income, and you're going to look at your assets to determine where you fall as far as qualifying. And again, there's some adjustments that can be made on your income, and it's important to understand those. And that's why I always throw out, and I already know Clay agrees, having that conversation with an accredited rep who can sit there with you can sit there and have that conversation with somebody who's filled out 30 of these in the last 12 months, right? So that's an important piece to know. So the war periods, you can look in there. If you're not sure what war period your spouse served in, you're not sure if they were on the cusp or not, because look, a lot of times if you didn't actually serve in combat, you're not really talking about it in that aspect. So you might not know if they fall within the time frame or not. You can look those up. They're all listed. Another piece that you'll need to think about is the amount of time served. Now, for a surviving spouse, look, you're flying solo now, and so that's what this video is for. You need to get, I guess, their records, okay? And oftentimes these things that they've disappeared years ago. And I will tell you that with the fact that only 30% or less of veterans are actually utilizing VA compensation, and 70% are not, and a lot of those 70% that are not, who knows where their records are. You can order their records with an SF-180, that's standard form 180, and you could order their military records. Okay, you can get their DD-214, which is their discharge paperwork, and you might as well just get all of their medical paperwork as well, because it could qualify you for DIC, which is preferable over this one. However, important to know where they're at. There are some qualifiers based on when they served. If they served before 1980 or after 1980, there's some time period differences. If it was before 1980, they had to serve 90 days. If it was after, they had to serve a full 2 years or their entire enlistment. So there's some quirky things with this benefit, and again, that's why it's important that you have that conversation. As far as the dollar amounts are concerned, and I don't know if you have that information in front of you, Clay, or not, how much a person can receive on pension. Do you have that information in front of you, or no?
No, not.
And that's fine. I do. So I'll just kind of keep going here for a second.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the way that it works is your maximum allowable pension rate. Okay, that's the most that you can receive. let's call it, here's the example on the VA's website, $21,166. Okay. Now, the VA is going to consider any other incomes you have. Okay. And whether it's income from a job or Social Security or whatever, and then they're going to deduct down what things you can deduct down of that pay to lower how much you're receiving. Okay. Now, let's say that your adjusted income is $10,000 a year. What's going to happen is they're going to go, okay, well, your maximum allowable, just to use easy numbers, we'll call it 21,000. Easy numbers, 21,000 is your maximum allowable income, really, is what they're saying. You're already getting 10,000, so that leaves you $11,000 of now VA pension, and they will pay you VA pension broke down on a monthly basis of $900 and something per month. They will pay you that $900 and something a month to take you up to that $21,000 threshold. Now, if you have zero income, you have no Social Security, you have nothing, then it would be $21,000 a year broke down into monthly payments, and they would pay you out that every single month. Again, you're not going to get rich off of this. You're not going to be driving around in a brand new car or anything like that, but at least you can afford to maybe get some food, right? You can afford to maybe keep a roof over your head if you have some other help from some other avenues, right? So it is, again, a safety net program, and that's the way that I like to explain it. And I feel like this is a good transition point right here, Clay, to transition now to dependency and indemnity compensation. Why is it so good, and why is it preferred over VA pension? Is what we should really dive into, because if you could qualify for both, you absolutely would want the dependency indemnity compensation over pension. So, Clay, go ahead and let us know a little bit about dependency and indemnity compensation.
All right, so there's 3 avenues to DIC, and we're gonna say DIC because it's funny, right? There's 3 avenues to DIC. That's whether you are a spouse, a child, or a parent, and that's extremely important to know. You know, was it my father or mother? Was it my husband or wife? Or was it my son or daughter? Each of those, so spouse, child, and parents, have different eligibility requirements for DIC. I believe the parents eligibility does have an income requirement for that, and for instance, the spouse, if you had a child with a veteran, you would qualify. If you were married to the veteran for 1 year, you would qualify. And then if you were remarried, and there's some clauses in there, so you absolutely want to look this up. If you remarried, you may still be entitled to that DIC compensation. And this is, it's not a peachy subject to talk about. We're talking about the veteran has passed away, especially if you are a parent. I couldn't imagine that. But if that does apply to you, you absolutely want to take advantage of this benefit. There's really no reason not to. I can tell you, one of my friend's parents is receiving DIC, and they take that money and then funnel it into a nonprofit. And they went that route with it. I'm not saying you have to do that, but that's just one example of just taking advantage of the benefits and kind of making glass half full situation of a something that's more than likely really bad.
Yeah, good call. So dependency indemnity compensation, again, and we'll dive into some of the specifics, because that's the whole purpose of this longer form video, is to, one, talk about a few subjects under the same umbrella, and then have a couple little deep dives into certain aspects of it. For the purposes of kind of moving forward, I'm going to just focus on the spouse, right? So, because that's going to be your primary beneficiary, would be the spouse. For the spouse, typically what you're looking for as far as the requirement is concerned is the veteran is either passed away due to a service-connected condition, right? And again, this goes back to what I had talked about prior, which is the way the death certificate is set up. There's a cause of death and there's a contributing cause of death section. And I'm going to give the same example In fact, I'll give a real life example, which is kind of close to the same thing. Veteran passes away from a heart attack, does not have any sort of heart condition at all that he's service connected for. And the death certificate just says the heart condition. The spouse files for DIC and they get denied. They talk to me, we go over it, and we look at the death certificate and we look at all of the conditions that he's service connected for. And he's service connected for a circulatory issue in his legs. And so we went back and we had the death certificate amended and had them add that circulatory condition in his legs as a contributing factor or contributing cause, rather, to his heart attack cause of death. And then we resubmitted the claim and she was awarded DIC. So it's really, really important that this is the biggest piece of evidence for individuals, is making sure that you have the condition listed, a service-connected condition listed on the death certificate in either spot, either cause of death or contributing cause of death. Now, the exception to that is once the veteran has been rated 100% for 10 years, then that goes out the window and you can die from anything. You can walk outside and get hit by a bus, and that's fine. Zero relation to any service connected conditions, but merely based on the fact that you were 100% for that 10-year period. The VA views it as though your family unit has relied upon this 100% monetary benefit, and to rip it away because of your death is quite frankly unfair. There has been conversations in Congress about reducing that from a 10-year to a 5-year period, which I am all for, and I wish they would do it. Yes, Clay, there is some stipulations in there regarding marriage and getting remarried, and it's it used to be, I think, 57 years of age, and now they changed it to 55 is the newest one. And there is legislation actually out there calling to eliminate it completely because a surviving spouse is a surviving spouse, period. And, you know, what if you're 30 years old and your spouse goes overseas and ends up dying, right? And now here we are, and you have to wait 30 something years before you could remarry. Seems a bit ridiculous. So those provisions are in effect. The thing that's really interesting to me is all of the various add-ons that can happen with DIC. And I wanted to dive into that a little bit. And when it comes to DIC, you have a base rate. So this is it. If you qualify for dependency indemnity compensation, here's your payment. But then there's a multitude of different add-ons that can be added on to the benefit itself, much like veterans disability compensation, adding your spouse, adding your dependents, getting aid and attendance, right? We have these little extra add-ons that we can do. Same thing happens for a surviving spouse who's receiving dependency indemnity compensation. So if your spouse passed away, veteran spouse passes away after January 1st, 1993, and again, remember, it could be service-connected condition listed on the death certificate in either spot, or it could be the veteran was rated 100% for 10 years. Then the surviving spouse would then qualify for the base rate at $1,612, which is fantastic, but that can almost double or even go more than double once you add these different things on. What I wanted to talk to you about, Clay, is what does the VA look at as far as income concerning this specific benefit for a spouse?
For a spouse, so it absolutely depends. But looking at DIC, there is you can be a millionaire and still qualify for DIC, right? Which is absolutely different from pension. The spouse pension is set for like that scenario I gave in middle of nowhere Kentucky. There's a low income threshold West Virginia probably would fall into that, right? That kind of area. But DIC, you could be a millionaire and your spouse, you rate DIC benefits, you can take advantage of that benefit. Simple as that.
Awesome. So just to make it easy for veterans to understand too, is pension is kind of like TDIU,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's kind of an income thing. You can't really go make a lot of money. You can earn some, but not a lot. And then DIC is kind of like just regular disability compensation. I can go on and make whatever money I want as long as I'm on the regular schedule. So same thing with this benefit. Um, are you aware of any of the off the top of your head? I mean, I don't want to make you guess. So are there any off of the top of your head of the additional provisions that can be added onto DIC?
Not off the top, not without
Okay.
looking it up right now.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
go
And I
ahead.
didn't want you to throw it out there and then be like, I'm not sure if that's exactly what it was, because there's so many and they're a little bit
Yeah.
funky sometimes. One of the great ones is if you were married to your veteran, right? So you were married for 8 years prior to their death, and during that same time, the veteran was rated 100%. So 8 years, right? If the veteran was rated for at least 8 years at 100%, and that includes TDIU, and you were married that same 8 years, you get something called the 8-year provision. That 8-year provision is an additional per month forever $342 and some change. So add that to your 1,600, right? Another great one is let's say, look, not every spouse is in 100% great condition. Maybe you as the spouse need aid in attendance. You can get that through DIC, and that's an additional almost $400 a month, $399 and change. You can also get housebound allowance as a spouse on DIC, and that's an additional 187. One of the great benefits too is for children. So just like we add our dependent children onto our disability compensation payments, that can also happen for the spouse. You get $342 for the first 2 years after the veteran's death by simply having kids, because it's such a shakeup for the household. The VA recognizes that and goes, you might need to get different child care things. You might need to have somebody come help. So we're going to pay you $342 for the first 2 years simply because you have children for the first 2 years. Then after that, you can also receive the money per child. And I believe that is $399.54 for each eligible child. So that is fantastic benefits. The example that the VA has, just to round it all out for you, is the basic rate again. And I'm going to drop the change just because it's irritating. So 1,612 monthly rate, plus $399 for the first child, plus $399 for the second child, plus $342 for the 8-year provision, plus $399 for aid in attendance, plus $342 for that transitional. I had kids, the veteran passed away, we still have children. They're going to pay you for 2 years this transitional benefit of $342. That takes you to $3,495 of tax-free money per month. Huge. Now, here's a question for you, Clay, and I hope you know the answer. And if you don't, I do. That's fine. And I'm pretty sure you do. So now you're a spouse who's in that bucket. It's a sucky bucket to be in, but money does help make it a little less sucky, because it would really be sucky if there was no additional money. Just saying. So now you're in this situation. The surviving spouse, who's now receiving, we'll call it $3,500 a month in this example, should probably look at Chapter 35. And is there anything that they can do there with those two benefits?
100%. 100%.
Okay.
The Chapter 35, there's so if you rate DIC, you have the benefits as if the veteran was there. Okay. And the VA, if the let's talk opposite. If the VA took that away, it would just be like, what are you doing?
Right.
So 100%, they would be able to rate the stipend for DEA, Chapter 35.
That's awesome. So in effect, they can collect both. So now you're getting
Yes.
3,500 plus another 1,500. So what's that? $5,000 a month, right? Now, granted, it's only going to last for so long, right? But it's a bridge. The Chapter 35 will only last for whatever, 3 or 4 years, right? Depends how, if you're going to school all the time, whatever. So it's only going to last for so long. The transitional benefits only going to last for 2 years. So you're going to see a little drop there. But both of these benefits are going to come with COLA adjustments every year, which is also going to be helpful. But it's just important to understand that there is a financial kind of bridge that can be made. And ideally, maybe you were a stay-at-home parent or you worked part-time, and now all of a sudden the main breadwinner is gone. So now you can go get that education you need to then go out and get the job that you need in some cases, right? It's nothing is ever, like you've said before, Clay, cookie cutter. Everybody's situation is different, and that is what is so nuancy. It's hard to give every single scenario that's going to fit everybody. So it's kind of like we talk a little bit about different things. So hopefully something will click for everybody. Is there anything else that you want to touch on with regard to any of these specific programs and benefits that we've talked about?
There is. And you mentioned it in the beginning, and it all comes down to being properly rated. So one of the most common questions we've seen, especially after the PACT Act, is I'm 100% PNT. Should I claim anything on the PACT Act? And everyone's going to say, don't poke the bear, don't do that, don't do this. And that, in my opinion, that's the wrong answer. One, there's no cookie cutter answer for that. Two, I think hypertension is a fantastic example for the Vietnam era veterans, and then I would probably argue that COP D would be the great example for the Gulf War era veterans, right? So I'm 100% PNT. I have the ability to get hypertension service connected, even at 0%, right? Service connected is service connected, whether that's 0 or 1,000,000,000%, doesn't matter. And so now that Vietnam era veteran that was 100% PNT does a claim, it's presumptive. The evidence is airtight. Okay, you want to make sure your evidence is airtight. Now you have hypertension service connected. Now all of a sudden, it's not for you, right? Your children, maybe your parents, depending on what that looks like, but especially your spouse now has the ability, right, to take advantage of, hey, my spouse passed away from a heart condition. They were rated at hypertension 0%, and now we have DIC. Now we have the eligibility for DE for Chapter 35 after the veteran passes away, and that is everyone talks about 100% PNT, but really the goal is properly rated. You want to make sure you're properly rated, and if it's not for you, do it for your family, and that would be the. If anyone hears anything from this video, it's that get properly rated.
Right, because it opens up all the windows, right?
Mhm.
And you know what? I agree with you 100%. Don't leave it on the table. There are obviously, it's like you said again, it's not cookie cutter. It's not for everybody. There's some situations where, like, look, it just it doesn't really make sense. Like, tinnitus, right? If I'm already 100% permanent in total, it really doesn't matter for that specific condition. Like, what am I going to hang on that? But your example for hypertension is huge. That's a great example, and I love that one. My thing is like, I'll get that question. Look, I'm already 100%. Why should I file for anything? What would even be a reason? And yes, to your point, exactly. That's a huge one. It helps with any of these forward-thinking things like DIC. It can help you get to permanent and total if you're not already permanent and total. If you're just 100%, this could help you get to the permanent aspect of it. I also throw out that sometimes additional conditions might take you to special monthly compensation potential, or even clothing allowance. So, you might have a condition that's going to warrant a clothing allowance for you. Maybe you're getting some sort of a cream for some sort of a condition that's now damaging your clothes, or you have some sort of a brace or prosthetic or whatever. So those types of things are reasons why. I'm going to chime back in on the DIC piece for the remarriage aspect, so people are aware. Here it says that if you remarried, you can receive or continue to receive compensation if one of these describe you. You remarried on or after December 16th, 2003, and you were 57 years of age or older at the time you remarried. So in other words, if you were younger than that, then it goes away, and then you'll have to kind of like reapply for it. The next one is you remarried on or after January 5th, 2021, and you were 55 years of age or older. So in other words, if today, January 2024, the veteran passes away, you were married, veteran passes away, and you qualify for DIC, you would lose DIC if you remarried before the age of 55. They would take it away. So people will just not get married. Let's say that let's use the example of, because if you're 54, the chances of you getting married before you're 55 and your husband or wife just passed away is probably pretty slim, right? But let's say that you are 30 years old and now you have to wait, 25 years. That's a lot to ask, I think, of someone. So, and I'm going to throw this out there. Let's say that you're single, a single veteran, right? You have no spouse. Well, maybe if you're 100% permanent and total, or you're going to pass away of a service-connected condition, you can advertise that to a prospective spouse, right? Hey,
marketing. Yeah.
I was going to make up shirts, got DIC, right? So anyway, so that's pretty much it. I love that we touched on all four. I think that some of them kind of connect to each other. I mean, they all make sense. Really, the only two that are kind of a if, this or that are really the pension or the DIC. DIC does not require wartime service period, where pension does. Pension is income-based. DIC is not. DIC pays more. Pension pays less, takes you up to the poverty level. So with that, Clay, is there anything else you want to throw out there? Last words?
Last thing I want to say, there's legislation on the floor that's been introduced. I forgot the name of it, but it's to get rid of the remarriage criteria, and it involves a broad stroke, right? So one of my friends from high school, she had married a service member her senior year of high school. This was the height of the Afghan war in Helmand Province. Her husband passed away. She's my age. She's 30, and she has met someone else, but they're just not getting married, right? And that seems really stupid, but it's because she's going to lose those benefits. And so even if you fall in that window, or you're the spouse of a veteran that passed away, that is something I would definitely keep my eye on. And that is, I think that would be unanimously pushed. I really don't see anyone making a good argument against that, but food for thought. That criteria could change by the time you watch this.
Yep, absolutely. And if you're watching this, you can support that legislation, and you could do Google searches or whatever, and we'll try to put the link to or add the information in the description, or drop it in the comments for you as well. So with that, we'll go ahead and end it there. Thank you guys so much for watching. We appreciate each and every one of you. Have a great one. And remember, if we don't take care of each other, something went wrong.